UFC interim bantamweight champion Petr Yan issued a warning to Aljamain Sterling following his big win at UFC 267. Yan defeated Corey Sandhagen via unanimous decision in the co-main event of this past Saturday's UFC 267 card. The fight was absolutely phenomenal, as both men went back and forth for the entire 25 minutes in one of the best fights of the year. But at the end of the 5 rounds, it was Yan who ended up getting his hand raised with 3 49-46 scorecards. By beating Sandhagen, Yan has now set himself up for a future fight against Sterling, who is technically the UFC bantamweight champion after winning the belt from Yan earlier this year at UFC 259. Of course, that fight was marred in controversy after Sterling was kneed in the head by Yan illegally in the 4th round when he was a downed opponent. Because Yan landed the illegal knee, which led to the stoppage of the fight, Sterling won by disqualification. Yan and Sterling were supposed to meet at UFC 267, but Sterling was not able to fight due to lingering issues stemming from neck surgery, which led to Sandhagen stepping in on short notice. But now that Yan has the interim belt and Sterling has the actual title, the two are supposed to meet in a title unification bout sometime in 2022. But if you ask Yan, he believes that Sterling is still afraid of him. "I live inside his head. The man who ran away once will always run again. He has a chicken heart. I know it's called an interim belt, but in fact, it has all the functions of the real belt too. When I get the chance and opportunity to beat up Sterling again, I will do it in a more dominant way to leave no doubts who the real champion is. I'm going to hurt him real bad this time." On a recent episode of the Weighing In podcast, Big John McCarthy reacted to the shocking refereeing negligence at UFC 267. He had the following to say: "I want everyone to remember this going forward. I want you to watch his career, and let's see what happens. And let's see how much of himself he left inside of that cage based upon a referee that would not do the right thing. It's not your job to let someone try to fight back. It's your job to take care of them when they are so tough that they won't quit. And someone was putting a beating on a fighter that can affect their life from this day forward in a negative fashion. Then not only did he let it go past that point, but then that fighter gets poked in the eye. So now he's not only beaten to death, but now he's blind now. This was one of the worst examples of officiating in the UFC I'd ever seen. And I've seen some bad officiating, but this one was not only the disregard of the fighter's safety, but also the disregard of the fighter's welfare. The one thing I want to say is thank God for guys like Mark Ratner, who got on the phone and made sure that that person was done for the night and was not going to do another fight. I hate to say this, but you just ruined his career. He's not going to be the same. He's not going to be able to come back the same because he took an incredible beating. This gentleman shouldn't be doing professional fights anymore because he doesn't have the common sense to know when you are required to do your job." Michael Bisping believes Khamzat Chimaev put the entire welterweight division on notice with his UFC 267 win over Li Jingliang. Chimaev made his return to the octagon on the main card of UFC 267 against Jingliang. Many expected the fight to be a more competitive one, but Chimaev took Jingliang down right away and ground and pounded him until he sunk in the choke, and the fight was over in the 1st round. It was another dominant performance, and for Bisping, he claims the entire division, and especially the champion Kamaru Usman, is paying close attention to Chimaev. Khamzat Chimaev, for any doubts people had, this man's the real deal. If you're a welterweight, watch your back. If you're Kamaru Usman, who's the pound-for-pound champ right now, he's paying attention. He saw that on Saturday night and was like, okay, we could have an issue on our hands. We could have a contender. We could have someone who's going to give me a real fight. According to Michael Bisping, he believes Khamzat Chimaev needs one more fight before he gets a title shot. He thinks a bout against Vicente Luque makes sense, but regardless, Chimaev has what it takes to be a UFC champion. Of course he's got to beat Colby at the weekend, which I think he probably will. But anyway, the point I'm making is everybody is looking at Khamzat Chimaev. The guy is unreal. What a freak, and I mean that in a good way. To have the confidence to go forward and just grab Jingliang like that, throw him down, and this is what he's done in every fight. 4 fights, 4 finishes, 4 quick fights, only hit 1 time. He's going to get to fight for the belt pretty soon, but I think he needs 1 more, and that would be a 5-fight win streak, and then he'll fight for the belt. Colby Covington is set to rematch Kamaru Usman in the main event of UFC 268 in Madison Square Garden in New York City. It's a highly anticipated rematch, as the two had one of the best fights of 2019, as Usman won by 5th-round TKO in a controversial stoppage. However, it was a back-and-forth fight, and both men had moments they can take into the rematch. Ahead of the rematch, Covington says the UFC forced Usman to take it because the champ didn't want to fight him again. When the two do step into the octagon on Saturday night, Colby believes he will KO Usman on Saturday night. "We are in New York, about to get that belt. What's up, baby? You can't stop us. We just landed in New York City from the great state of Florida. We are out here to come and get a UFC world title. What's driving me is revenge. He doesn't want to be here. If it wasn't for the UFC forcing his hand, telling him, hey, if you don't fight Colby, we'll strip you and move on, he wouldn't be here. He was looking for any way to avoid fighting me. It's a great feeling for this to be in New York City. They say the city never sleeps, but hopefully they'll make an exception Saturday night, because I'm putting Marty to sleep in Madison Square Garden." Colby Covington has not fought since he beat Tyron Woodley by TKO due to a rib injury last September. It was his first fight under his new training camp at MMA Masters, which could be a factor against Kamaru Usman on Saturday at UFC 268.